Hello everyone, I hope you're doing good, and today we will be talking about the article of the week, which is the myth of westernization. Now I know that some of you might be thinking, well, what is westernization? How do I define it? How does the article define it? But first of all, I'm going to leave a few timestamps over here so that you can follow along easily, and if you want, you can simply pick one portion of the entire video and watch it. So before I start any article of the week, I have now decided to give you the upfront summary, the upfront conclusion of what I learned personally from this article, since this is what article of the week has always been about. It has always been about getting you the most juicy content out there in the shortest amount of time possible. So here's what I learned. The West has a habit of falling in love with its own assumptions and then challenging anything that does not meet their premises. Also, Fukuzawa Yukichi can be looked upon as a proto-Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. The difference in the way he has been treated by Japan and Sir Syed has been treated by India is crystal clear to anyone who has ever recited Aligarh's Tarana. Now, I'm sure that while you are listening to this, you may have had a lot of questions. Well, first of all, who is Fukuzawa Yukichi? Now, we will get to that in the later parts of this video, since he is the personality around whom the entire article revolves. But as for Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, he will not be mentioned anymore, because that is a personal inference that I derived. See, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was a reformer of the Muslims in the Indian subcontinent. You know, he was alive till 1898, and he is of course instrumental in setting up MAO or Mohammedo Anglo Oriental College, which is now proudly known as Aligarh Muslim University, a university which, well, is my alma mater. Now, I will address my own comments about Sir Syed Ahmad Khan perhaps in some another video, because I genuinely think that he has been misconstrued and mistreated by the general Muslim population of India as well as the Indian government, and it's completely understandable. Why would anyone care if the community he had worked for so hard does not care about him anyway? So without much further ado, and without getting tangled up in my own emotional sphere of why I think that Sir Syed Ahmad Khan has been mistreated, we should jump right into the article. So Fukuzawa Yukichi is this one person who has been looked upon by the West for the longest time possible as a person who westernized Japan. Well, that is not true actually. You see, he was an interpreter who went to America and he saw the lifestyle of the Americans. He did not appreciate their manners a lot, but he really liked the way they could discuss and deliberate upon each and every single topic out there. Now, he himself was raised in a samurai family, which meant that he was kept away from scholarly articles. But that being said, right after the Tokugawa shogunate fell, which was, a dynasty that was in Japan, following the Meiji Restoration, there were like a lot of reforms that were taking place. And one of them was the idea that Japan was going to invade Korea. However, that was not the right way to go about it. Why, you may ask? Well, you see, Japan was already in a lot of debt. It had taken debt, it had taken loans from the British, and well, as we all know, right when two countries start to fight, Britain is obviously going to join in. And they feared that if they go and attack Korea, then their own defenses would be weakened, and this opportunity can be exploited by the British Navy, which was positioned very nearby. In fact, some estimates claim that by 1873, Japan was at a debt of 5 million pounds. 5 million pounds of that time. You can imagine how much that is in today's world, if you measure up for everything such as inflation. Now, Fukuzawa did not believe in this at all. He instead wanted Japan to spend money towards human development. He wanted to spend money towards textile development, and that is what Japan did. It did not go into a military expedition against Korea. It did not do that. It instead chose to invest into its human population, and it paid off. The economy started to boom again as a result of so much money being invested into the textile industry and into education sectors. In fact, multiple universities were named after Fukuzawa. But you see, here's the point. Fukuzawa never intended to westernize Japan. That was an idea that was created, that was a paradigm that was created by the West itself in order to showcase to its own population that look at us, we are so good. Other countries are mindlessly adopting our own attitudes. Now, I've got nothing against the West. I think that they do some things better than anyone else, but I also think that they do some things worse than everyone else. And that is what Fukuzawa understood as well. So he took their debate and discussions, but he left out the manners. He left out the imperial policies of the West. And I'm not here defending Japan's imperial policies as well, because I understand that Japan has not been the poster boy for any kind of democracy or any kind of peaceful settlement when it had the chance of exploiting its neighbors, such as China. So in the 20th century, while a lot of things were unfolding and the Russo-Japanese War had taken place in 1905 and 1906, the West was really confused because it did not understand how were there so many warriors in Japan. They thought that, okay, we understand that if this would have been the Tokugawa shogunate, then we understand that people would be some form of samurais, or they would be carrying swords or something like that. But how are there so many fighters in Japan left? I thought that they were a democracy. We thought that they accepted our own ideals. So after the Pacific War was over, which was actually the last war of World War II, the West decided to do what it does best, and that was to influence an entire culture. So what it did was that it went there and it made sure that Japan was civilized properly. And one of the main culprits in doing this was Edwin O Resichauer. Now I know that I'm butchering that name, but trust me, the butchering would be worth it once you realize what this person has done. He was a Harvard professor and he concocted so many books. Even though he did not know anything about modern day Japan, he only knew about ancient Japan. In fact, he did not know about modern day Japan till the Pacific War. So he concocted a lot of books that showed how Japan has always been influenced by the West, and how Tokugawa was actually a person who sought to modernize and who sought to westernize the entire Japanese area, the entire Orient. Now, such people actually miss out on a very important point. Yes, Resichauer may have become the foreign minister under John F. Kennedy in 1961. Yes, he may have showcased how Christianity really helped the Japanese, even though it was widespread amongst only the top 1% population of Japan. And he tried his absolute best to make the Japanese feel indebted for whatever the West was doing to their country. But they still left out something that is never mentioned around in Western textbooks. During that same time, there was a conference in Tokyo of major academicians, and the title of that conference was Overcoming Modernity. It was because the Orientals did not see much of a difference between Westernization and modernization, even though I highly contend with that, and I'm pretty sure that now we have different definitions of modernity than simply adopting what the West has to offer. And again in this conference, it was again showcased that people were not happy with the way they were being treated. People do not want to be seen as somebody who is in need of guidance. A true leader does not tell his people that they need guidance, or that they are very inferior. But that is how the West has always been. It has instilled within countries a sense of inferiority complex, and then it sort of exploits the same thing. So how does the West do it? Well, the US has a very good trick. They rewrite the history of a nation, the colonial nation. They rewrite its history, and then they showcase that history to the world and to the people of the colonized land, that this is what your reality is. And after a generation or two, people actually start believing them. There are no more dissident voices left around, and they actually start believing that they are the people who really needed reform, and it was the white man who actually carried forward the legacy of civilization by spreading it throughout their land. So this is the way US has been operating. This is what it's tried to do with Japan, but of course they have been failing right now, as many intellectuals from the West itself, and I really commend the West for being able to do this. I know that it is not okay for me to blame an entire civilization for what the top bureaucrats were doing at the time, but I must really add here that I really appreciate the West for their spirit of dialogue and discussion, and that there will always be so many contenders out there. There would always be so many so many whistleblowers out there, and they will all come from the West somehow, or the Central Europe. They would always be trying to reshape our understanding of what modernity is, or what happiness is, what true progress looks like. So Fukuzawa Yukichi is still looked upon as a person to emulate in modern Japanese society, and we find that Syed Ahmad Khan is nowhere upon that list when it comes to India. What is Syed Ahmad Khan's contribution to India? What has he done? What has he done for the general Muslim population? That is a video for another day. That is all for this one, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the video. And if you really like article summaries like this, then you should definitely consider subscribing the channel, because I upload videos every single day of articles of the day. Like, I summarize one article a day and I upload it. I upload a video about it. I upload a YouTube short, to be very precise, and I tell you guys that you can find the summary attached in the description box below. So it's really worth subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much. Have a good day.